There it
Over
is.
there. There we go.
Good evening,
Hi,
everyone. Good to
everyone.
see you. Welcome to Tuesday night Q&A. I'm
With
Clay, joined with
I'm Ellen,
E-Train,
with the wet-haired Ellen. Yes, it's
the
still
wet-haired Ellen.
the curly. Just it doesn't do well in the summer with blow
Hannah,
drying.
the wet-haired Clay. Can you tell we just showered? How nice is it to have hosts that shower for you when we're on
Yes, we do.
YouTube?
Hmm.
But it's good to see everybody. Dogs discussions. Hello, Sky. How are you doing? I'm going to hesitate calling you dog. I just,
Or dogs. We just
yeah.
can't do it.
Jane,
Hey,
good
Jane.
evening. Good to see you. Did y'all get Carson fixed up with some comfort food? And
And
Melissa, good
Melissa.
evening.
Hey, Melissa. Um,
Yeah, Ellen was just filling me in on the discussion. Went from dragons to frozen Coke. Y'all have
and
an interesting
fries.
discussion.
And fries. Come on now. Clay said a big old slam burger, which is when you gotta slam together.
To be
You
able
don't
to
know
fit it in
how,
your mouth.
why, or how your name changed? I mean, I might have some idea. I'm just saying. It's a good idea, though.
Did you change
It's
it?
good. It's good to have everything the same in all of your social media platforms. You have two accounts now. Cool. I like that. And I'm going to pop up the banner for the book club.
Book club. Don't
And I
forget
want to.
that is actually tomorrow night.
Mhm.
So if you haven't started reading the book, you might want to get started after the show, of course. And if you
Don't leave
haven't
us
read
for
the
that.
book, yeah, if you haven't read the book, if you don't have the book, then still join us. We'll be discussing, ideas and thoughts, and you could still have some input. Join in the fun. So look forward to seeing you, especially those
Absolutely.
of you on the replay crew. Some of y'all we haven't been able to see in a while, so just know you're missed.
Absolutely. And hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. It's free, but it helps us out a whole lot with YouTube and their algorithms. And Twitter, if you're on Twitter. And
Yeah, we
Rumble,
have
if you're on Rumble. We have all the things.
Yeah, we have a nice little have had a nice little growth spurt the past few months. So uh looking forward, hopeful to continue it. Dave, good to see you again. Welcome. Um the families, the gang's all here.
The gang's all here.
So it's good to see y'all. Has been a hectic day. I've just been doing, 10 different things, and Ellen's been working on some stuff, some for the channel. So
Hmm.
this is kind of like our break period for the night.
Yes, and I have been, honestly, I have been getting shadow banned all day on YouTube. So,
Shadow banned?
mhm.
Oh. Yeah, try changing the title of one of the videos, taking out and just inserting BS instead of the word.
it, but it was started. It wouldn't matter. That wasn't it. It was the Fauci thing.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, there are just certain types of videos that aren't as acceptable to the powers that be as others.
that is
And
true.
sometimes you're not really sure exactly where that line is drawn.
I mean, the governor of New York, that one was killing it. We had like 20,000 in 2 hours. And then all of a sudden, nothing. That one got shadow banned. Where she said that black children in the Bronx didn't know what a computer was.
Yeah. And so you go from 20,000 in 2 hours to 20,000
Nothing.
in 24 hours.
Yeah. things get shadow banned, and usually our shorts go like 1,000 in the first hour, and this one got 10 in 3 hours. So yeah. YouTube does not love the content that I put out.
Sometimes they don't. Now, the Kenny Rogers video, how many views does it have?
Okay, if you stop saying Kenny Rogers, Ron White.
Ron White. Yeah, sorry. I don't know why I say Kenny Rogers.
Every time. Let me look. It has total, you mean?
Yeah.
Hang on. Lifetime, which is what, 3 months? Hang on, give me a sec, and I will find it. You continue on. Yes, that is what Rumble is for. You're right.
Only problem with Rumble is they've got a really wanky system, and it's harder to pay your bills on Rumble.
It has 1.3 million.
It's got more than that.
That's what it's telling me right now. In the first 112 days and 2 hours. Sometimes let me go to a different screen. Lifetime. No, 1,321,155.
Huh. I thought I had more than that. Interesting. But still a hell of a good number.
Yeah. That was the first short I did.
Yeah, still generating a lot of comments. Speaking of comments, was kind of reading through, I try to read through the webs. It's where I get, some news and information from, some entertainment. And as I was, we've got a site on Twitter, Moffat on Money on Twitter. Mm-hmm. If you haven't joined, or followed, hit the follow button on there as well, if you will. But I noticed
I'm at Ellen Lee 05. So I post all the stuff first.
Yeah, I noticed there was a continual train of posts today. And I thought it was kind of interesting, not necessarily trying to pat ourselves on the back, but going to pat ourselves on the back a little bit here, I guess. Can't think of another way really to describe it. For example, we'll start off here with this one talking about 63 banks on the brink of default, 500 billion in losses. Well, if you watch Saturday night, we covered that then 3 days ago. Declining GDP growth. 50% believe we are in a recession. Lowest mortgage demand 30 years. A record of 1.7 trillion household debt. Past 2 weeks, we have covered all that. If you watch the show, you're ahead of the internet. But wait. Here's another one. Breaking U.S. banking system. But wait, there's more. Here's another one. 63 banks. Everybody is like posting this as breaking news. I think they got it from us.
Oh, you're just telling on yourself now.
We have more followers than what we anticipate. But all of these are breaking news on the financial collapse. FDIC just reported 63 banks on the bankruptcy. So, the good news is if you're watching the channel, I can pretty much guarantee you are far better informed than most everybody else. Just gave an example. Now, one thing that I thought was kind of interesting was, major regional bank performance this week. Not too pretty. I say this week, 2 days, not too pretty.
Wait, Truist, what did they say?
Down nearly 2%.
Gotcha.
So, and we've talked about the differences in the major banks and the regional banks, how the regional banks are the ones holding a lot of the CRA, commercial real estate, that is in dire trouble, particularly with the very high vacancy rates, whether it's office building or with all the shops closing down, even the malls, the strip malls, et cetera, are losing occupants, losing business. And most of that debt's held by regional banks, smaller, mid-sized regional banks.
Who holds most of the residential mortgage debt? Same.
Again, that would be mostly smaller and regional banks.
I
So
thought
you've
so.
got,
Wasn't sure.
yeah, you've got home defaults starting to rise, credit card defaults rising, near all-time highs. A lot of the credit cards are, though, issued by major banks. I don't know exactly the breakdown or percentage on that, but a lot of those services are major banks. But commercial real estate, 80, I forget the exact number. We talked about it. About 75 to 85% of all the commercial real estate loans are regional banks.
Mm-hmm.
Credit card delinquencies, we talked about that several weeks ago.
But I'm sure it just gets better and better, or worse and worse with each week, each passing week.
Chicago PMI, 6th straight month of manufacturing contraction. A reading this low has only ever occurred during a recession. Does all that sound familiar?
Yeah.
It should. Here's one, Bloomberg. Bloomberg is a huge data source in financial and economics. It's not cheap, but they have an article, Unexpected. Now, they describe it as an unexpected spark for Fed cuts. They talk about it as a good thing. Well, the details are they're pointing out that the BLS overstated non-farm jobs by 730,000 jobs last year. Again,
he talks about that too. Hey guys, what's up?
Banks look wrecked from gas. Yeah, Banks look wrecked. Rate cuts are coming.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too quick about that because there's some competing pressures. For example, Japan is hiking its rates. The Bank of Japan is hiking its rates. Now, it's maintained a very low interest rate environment for 2 decades, finally starting to raise its rates. Well, Japan is a weird country. The people in Japan are more concerned about safety than they are return. Now, the gap between the Japan rates and the U.S. rates got to be so severe that the Japanese started buying more and more treasury bonds. Well, if the Bank of Japan is raising their rates, then in all likelihood, Japanese lenders who are buying U.S. treasuries or have been will probably switch back to buying Japanese bonds.
Let me, Clay, I think to maybe drive this home a little bit more for gas is there was so much money put in to the economy. There's kind of a bubble. And if they cut rates too quick, it's like kicking out the bottom card in a house of cards. It'll all fall down. In major recession, all kinds of, they've got to balance this. And if the rates are low again, it's not going to be good.
Well, let me finish what I was saying about Japan, in that you're looking at supply and demand for bonds. So if the Japanese investors quit buying treasury securities, China has been dumping $50 billion worth of treasury bonds a month. They're not buying more. They're trying to get off the dollar. So what you have is less and less demand for treasury bonds at a time when more and more treasury bonds are being issued. I don't know if you've noticed, but the total amount of U.S. debt has been kind of flat for the past month.
Can you?
And it's like, yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And it's like the Yellen is trying to stop borrowing before the election to try to reduce its election impact. Well, what she's doing is spending the Treasury's reserves to cover the deficit. So what that will simply mean is after the election, borrowing will skyrocket because they'll have to recapture, some of these reserves. So bottom line is right now, supply is a little bit reduced because the Treasury's not borrowing what it should be borrowing as far as how much the government is spending. And two, demand is being reduced because, demand is being reduced because Japanese and Chinese investors, certain international investors, are buying fewer treasuries. So the net effect of this is going to end up keeping rates higher, even if the Fed tries to cut. In terms of the federal government borrowing, they have to place it somewhere. And in order to attract enough lenders, they'll have to hike the rate. So even if the economy softens, it's very possible that rates not only can stay where they are, but rise over the next year.
Can you explain again how the Treasury bonds, what that's about and why it matters? Just because you explained the buying and selling of them, but what is a Treasury bond and how does that affect the market?
Okay, the government right now is taking in $5 trillion of taxes, all told, round numbers here, and is spending 7 or 8 trillion per year. So we're going to end up having a shortfall of, say, $2 trillion, just easy math. Well, they have to borrow that $2 trillion. And the way the government borrows that is that they sell bonds. Bonds are just a loan, which pay interest up until maturity, at which time the loan is repaid, actually refinanced. The government doesn't really pay them off. It just borrows more money in the future to pay the ones that mature. Does that make sense? So a bond is just a loan, and you have investors that will buy bonds, and treasury bonds have been considered the safest investment in the world for decades.
Because it is how the Fed sells its debt in order to keep the money supply where it is and above and beyond what it needs to be. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And everybody around the world felt comfortable buying bonds.
No one wants to anymore.
2 years ago, Biden did something that we refer to as weaponizing the dollar. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, he issued a number of sanctions. Okay, we've done that before, but he did something we'd never done before. We cut off their access to their reserves in dollars, and we excluded them from the international transfer system called SWIFT. So they no longer could do business in dollars. The idea was to hurt them. But what it did was, all the nations that do business in dollars started thinking, well, hey, if the U.S. doesn't like our policies, they can use the dollar against us as well. So Russia, China, India, South Africa formed an organization called BRICS, Brazil, India, China, Brazil, Russia, India, China. And that organization has grown to, it's got about 40 different countries now trying to join it, including maybe France, including maybe Germany. Last week, for example, Saudi Arabia has had a 70-year agreement with the U.S. to sell oil in dollars, only in dollars. Well, last week they told the U.S. that they are not going to renew that treaty, that agreement.
Didn't Russia do the same thing?
Well, Russia, after Biden cut them off, hasn't done anything in dollars since.
Yeah.
So more and more of the world trade is moving away from the dollar. And countries are trying to de-dollarize so that they are not held to the whimsy of U.S. politicians. So again, that hurts demand for U.S. treasuries, which means interest rates go up. Gas. I think risk is on. There's nowhere for investors to go. Look at the price of Bitcoin. A little later, Bitcoin has had a good few days. It's had a good few months, actually. And I believe risk is on too, which traditionally you see a flight to safety. People buying treasury bonds. Now, with all the uncertainty and anti-dollar sentiment, I don't think that trend is going to be as consistent or as strong. Even with risk on, there will be some flight to safety, but where will they go to? Will they go to Swiss bonds? Will they go to Bitcoin? I think they'll look for alternatives. I think investors in China, Japan, Russia that traditionally would have gone to the dollar, U.S. bonds, short-term bonds, treasury bills, no longer will. And so American investors may, but that'll be a temporary phenomenon. And it won't be as strong as it used to be. So we're in fascinating times. We're in places we've never been before. So history is not always a good light to look forward with, particularly when so much has changed. And that's my caution to people. Have a decent working knowledge of what has gone on in the past. But past is not always prologue.
Well, sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. And those who aren't prepared or thinking about it are more susceptible to getting burnt. So here's another one with the same Bloomberg insight. So anyway, my point is to y'all, we try to give you good info. We try to keep you up to date on information that's important and hopefully will help you make better decisions. And so going through this, there's, 15 different, tweets. And this was just on my feed. And I don't follow a whole lot of people. A lot of these were kind of retweets, but it just shows you the significance of this news and how people in the financial realm are viewing these events. It gives you some idea of the significance. And that's really my point. Along with, hey, know where you heard it first. Now, also, since we're kind of talking about Bitcoin, I want to give a shout out to all of my fellow psychopaths. There was a study out today that said Bitcoin fans are psychopaths who don't care about anyone.
Wait.
They're just greedy, narcissistic little bastards.
So are the unvaccinated. So are the people who don't want to follow all of the crazy rules that the government says that we have to. Listen, once you give up a freedom, it's going to take blood to get it back.
I just came across this this afternoon and did not have a chance to look up the study. But I've
Hmm.
looked at some of these, you see a lot of these studies down through the years, like conservatives are more this than liberals and whatever. And I find those interesting. And so I'll sit there and look at them, look at the methodology, look at how they divided up the two. And oftentimes, just to put it mildly, I have very strong disagreements with their definitions and their methodology. I mean, I do research for a living. And so we're always kind of critical of other researchers. That's peer review. That's how that's just the process we go through and enjoy. But I strongly suspect that whoever did this research had a modest bias, and the criteria they use, for example, you can't see the whole article, but down here, Bitcoin investors commonly exhibit dark personality traits such as narcissism and sadism, according to scientists. Well, I've been accused of being a narcissist. For example, when I thought that toilet paper and paper products were going to be in a shortage,
Wait, this is like a month before it happened, by the way.
yeah, I stocked up. I am going to take care of my family. That's my responsibility. Now, if you want to call me a narcissist for that, guilty. I'm fine. I don't really care. Sadism. Part of the reason why I would invest in Bitcoin, Ethereum is because I have for years had a failing confidence in the dollar, in the way it was being managed, in the political direction of certain trends. I follow trends. I make decisions based on what I see as trends. Encroachments on privacy, all these kind of things. So somebody might describe that as a dark personality. And if you've watched me for a while, I don't really know how many, I think none, would describe me as a dark personality.
Well, I mean, I might on occasion, but that's different.
You describe me as pretty much everything under the sun on occasion.
Well,
When you get going.
back at you.
Yeah, that's the privilege of living with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You do have certain differences of opinion on times, and that's okay. But I did say a few weeks ago, I was tired of being a doom and gloomer, because I've been telling you about all of these trends, all of these numbers, all of these reports, the miscalculations and the myths put out by the BLS BEA, which other people are now seeing and agreeing with. But it's not because I'm a dark spirit. It's because I just simply am reporting what I see to the best of my abilities. And if things turned around, I'd be reporting that. I'd be talking and discussing that. So as long as these things portend a worse future, I think it's my job to try to inform you and explain to you what's happening and why I think it's bad in relatively clear and concise terms. Now, I'll be glad to get more theoretical and academic, but I try to kind of shuck things down to the cob.
Yeah, please don't. Gas has a comment or two.
Golder BCC, things are changing. The younger generation see things so differently. They aren't psychopaths. No, I don't think so. I don't think because you don't trust the economic system that you're a psychopath. I think you're probably more of a realist. And this kind of brings up the whole discussion of conspiracy theorists. Everything that
Don't get
the
me started
system,
on that.
yeah, but most every opinion or thought that the system doesn't like, and by the system, I mean those who are entrenched in power or who are vested in the current structure of power. Being a little vague, but that's okay. if there's a contrary opinion or thought they don't like, instead of, rationally and intelligently, coherently arguing against it or pointing out its flaws, they just dismiss it as a conspiracy theory. And for the past 5-6 years, I mean, there's just a whole list I could give, but we have seen a ton of these quote unquote alleged conspiracy theories coming true. And we'll actually go into more detail into that tomorrow night.
Tomorrow. Yeah. I have also heard that, we used to say that a conspiracy theory is only a conspiracy theory for 6 months. And now I've heard it's 6 minutes. Mm. I mean, people are starting to really see through things. And I think that we can, Gas, if you want to go into the gold thing, I know Clay loves to go there. And why that isn't maybe the best way to go. And Gas says they are pissed with this system. Yes.
Can't blame them.
They are.
The only people I don't understand is those that aren't pissed with the system, unless they are getting rich off of it. Particularly the poor and the middle class, the working people, the people in mid-America, the people in the flyover areas have been getting the short end of the stick for far too long. And, I want to say chaos is coming. And a big reason for that is you can't consistently screw over half the population and there not ultimately be a breaking point.
Yep.
And even this election, I think most people agree, whichever way it goes, the other side is going to be relatively upset. And by relatively upset, I mean really upset.
Hey, Clay. Well, let's do Jane's first. Jane's comment. If you don't trust Dr. Fauci, then you don't trust the science. Dr. Fauci is the science.
Yeah. How many times have we heard that, particularly in the 2020 and 21? And, now, and we'll go into this in more detail tomorrow night. I don't want to, go ahead and get an early start on the book club, but.
No, but Jane, hang on. I know you haven't read the book, but you are fine for book club. You will fit right in. It's basically about all that and the things.
Yeah. Yeah, the book is Facing the Beast by Naomi Wolf.
It's on the bottom
and
of your
she talks about, some quote unquote conspiracy theories that she as a journalist tried to report on, and the powers that be, silenced her and kicked her out. Mm-hmm. So that resulted in this book. And, we talked about it briefly Saturday night, and I mentioned that, she's a little, you can tell she's pissed. She's a little bit hurt. She's a little bit whiny the first few chapters. But nonetheless, there's still some interesting ideas, principles, thoughts, details in the book. And it's worth discussing, whether you agree with them all or not. But that's what we'll do tomorrow night. And we'll lay out some of her points, some of her thoughts, some of the underlying philosophy even behind them, and talk about, details in the book. And the timing is really just about perfect because you've had Fauci testifying
yesterday.
And, some of the quotes, some of the comments just directly relate to what we'll be talking about. So it's a very timely subject and book.
So even if you haven't read the book, please come on in. We'd love to have you.
Don't know if I'd make it. I have too many other things going on at home. Understand. If it works out and you make it, we'd love to see it. If you just got too much else going on, we still love you.
Yeah, Jane does have a lot going on. And we love her.
Yeah, and we understand not every night is a convenient night. We had some people try to watch us that are now on Replay Crew just because Tuesday nights was so busy, whether it's with kids, school, they work evening shifts. Carson is one of those who works some evening shifts, and he jumps in and jumps out, and he'll, play the video fast to try to catch up sometimes. So,
Then we
you know,
sound drunk when he's back on regular pace.
so, we love all y'all and appreciate you watching, and hope that the time ultimately is profitable. Know that there's some rambling. Know that there's some, we also have a kind of a cliche saying, WAP. We are professionals.
We're not always professionals.
Yeah, we're not always professional. We have some technical difficulties and weird discussions and get off topic sometimes, but hey, it's just part of the rambling. And we do that oftentimes because of your comments or your thoughts, which are important to us. So if you've got, something you want to ask, something you want to say, a point you want to discuss, like, gold or Bitcoin, things are changing. That actually doesn't get enough credit or attention. Younger generations always see things differently until they start paying taxes. What's the old cliche? If you're not liberal when you're young, you have no heart. If you're not conservative when you're old, you have no brain. Now, some people may not like that or agree with it, but it's cliche. It's common. But this generation has been raised on wealth and comfort like no other generation. They've been through an educational experience.
Sorry about that.
With the lockdown and the social distancing and being confined to their house and having to wear masks. We see suicide rates soaring among the young. We see, stuttered learning skills, et cetera, et cetera. But they have been through some experiences unlike any other generation. Major experiences unlike any other generation. So how will that impact them? Not just now with their views, but as they get out and reality starts doing its educational thing. How will they change? How will they adapt? Will they be able to adapt? I don't know. But they are truly very different than what we've seen before.
Well, they have inherited a crap economy as well, which was not of their doing or fault. And gas.
No, but other generations have inherited a crappy economy.
Nothing
that happens on occasion.
As it is now, is it?
Yeah, the 70s were really bad. Yeah.
Gas, I want to say I appreciate you being here. I haven't seen you here before. But it's cool to have some new people in the fam.
Yeah.
In the Mobbing on Money family. And you have a new comment, Clay. Take it away.
And I will just add one thing. It really is kind of a family. We kind of get to know and love people, and they'll, email us questions. And, if there's a problem or something, sometimes we help, sometimes family members help. And it's really an unusual experience. I'm not an experienced YouTuber internet kind of person. And so this is weird to me, but, a lot of the people, on the show, I really feel a bond with, a close friendship with. I love them. And, they have been extremely nice and gracious, and it's just a little family. So welcome. All right. Other quick comment. Currency not pegged, but nothing but a promise. Bitcoin changes that. We've talked about crypto and Bitcoin several times in some of our previous shows. And Bitcoin, I believe Satoshi started Bitcoin because of the concerns he had about the future of the dollar and what actually a currency should be. It should be able to carry forward value, a store of value, as it's oftentimes referred to. It should be scalable, kind of like, if you think of the dollar, you can buy as much with 100 pennies as you can $1. So a penny holds a pro rata share of the dollar. And then it should be transportable. The dollar's easy to stuff in your pocket and carry it around. Gold.
It's hard to take a gold brick and put it in your pocket and carry it around.
Yeah, and buy bread with it, or, get some gas or whatever. Now, would I take a gold bar for a loaf of bread? Sure. If I really wanted to be confident, if it was a case of bread, I'd want to test that gold. So I'd need to be able to assay it and weigh it, all this kind of stuff to test to make sure it was real gold, not fool's gold. So there's some problems with gold. And that, gold has not performed all that well, the past few decades. Kind of looked a little different lately. Maybe it's coming back in vogue. I don't know. Bitcoin, Ethereum now have ETFs where, stock investors can more safely, quickly, easily, cheaply buy Bitcoin and Ethereum, whereas before they didn't understand ways to access it, or, were a little bit concerned about setting up, a wallet, et cetera, et cetera. So it's opened it up to a lot more investors. China just improved a Bitcoin ETF. So, and it's funny, they've tried to outlaw Bitcoin 3 times in the past. So now they've, legalized a ETF in the Chinese market. So you'll have Chinese investors dumping billions into it.
Isn't the U.S. government asking for transparency with Bitcoin? Or did I make that up?
Bitcoin has a transparent anonymity. So you can see every transaction, but it's from one number to another. And that number is a highly coded cryptographic combination that is really, really hard to decipher. It's impossible for an individual to do. The NSA can crack it, but it takes a supercomputer, or as of 10 years ago, it took a supercomputer about 2 days to do it, which meant it had to be a very, very, very important number. Nowadays, I don't know. Computing powers increased so much. But the only way they can really hack it ultimately is if you buy Bitcoin through your bank account. Like if you transfer $5,000 to Coinbase or Binance, they can see that transaction.
But they can't tell what you did with the money afterwards.
Yeah, once you buy the Bitcoin, there are ways to kind of bury those expenses. I won't go into that. That kind of gets more into some things that the government doesn't look fondly on.
The government has a problem with Bitcoin?
Yeah.
You're kidding.
And they originally they tried to say, crypto is just a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme, et cetera, et cetera. Now their whole tune has changed. The Fed is trying to develop its own cryptocurrency. The euro is already beginning to switch to a central bank digital currency. So crypto is coming. Now the government wants you to buy their crypto, to use their crypto, because they can track everything you do. Anything you buy, anything you sell, they'll have a record of. They'll know what you like. They'll know your medical issues. They'll know, your priorities. They'll even be able to create a coin that has a limited life. So you get paid, but you have to spend that money within the next 30 days or it expires. You can't save it. You can't carry it forward in time. Remember, one of the definitions of currency is a store of value. So once they begin doing that, it no longer can really academically be, or what's the term I'm looking for? It can't be classified as a true currency. China has the system with the social credit scoring.
Sorry.
So Melissa, it sounds like a good currency for pirates.
It would be,
Yeah.
but not dragons or bunnies.
Yeah, I think Ellen is, for those of you who've been watching the show, we haven't talked about dragons and bunnies. I think that's a chat that several of them have going.
I have
I
created a
think that's an
monster.
inside joke.
I have created a monster of a chat. Exact perceived value. Exactly. And
Perception is everything. And we talked about that. Even with gold. Why is gold valuable? Well, in some areas of the world, gold is not valuable. But in some areas of the world, the Western world particularly, people will kill you for gold. They will kill you for dollars. So is one more valuable than the other? Can I buy gold with dollars? Yes. So the perception of the dollar, I argue, is equal to that of gold. Now, people say, the dollar's fiat, it's not backed. And I remember there was a noted politician that was arguing that 10, 15 years ago. And I've told this story before, but I'll go ahead and repeat it. I had a discussion with him. And he was arguing that the dollar was fiat dollar was worthless. It wasn't backed by anything. It wasn't tangible. And I said, okay. And back then the dollar was, I forget. It might have been $2,000 an ounce. I forget exactly. And I said, I will give you an ounce of gold, something you value very highly. And you give me $5,000 of a worthless paper that you say has no real value. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you something of value. You give me something of no value. Fair enough? Mm-hmm. He stuttered. He would not take the trade, which proves to me he lacked the courage of his conviction, that he was just spewing off nonsense for political gain. Yes, the dollar has value. Yes, people will kill for the dollar. Now, you may think it's fundamentally weak or flawed because it's fiat. That's a whole different argument. Gold is fundamentally flawed in a lot of ways. You can have that argument for both of them. Go ahead.
No, I mean, it worries me that the value of the dollar is tanking.
Yes, and there have been times when the value of gold is tanked. We've had depressions on gold.
Hasn't gone beyond the 1980s value, correct?
I think in the 80s it got up to 2,000 and change. I don't know if it's broken that peak level or not. I'll have to look.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's broken that. You said that on Saturday.
So it has done a horrible job of keeping up with inflation for the past 50 years.
Right.
And we had a Great Depression on a gold standard. We have not had a Great Depression on a fiat. We had inflation on a gold standard.
Well, that's because it's easier to manipulate, in my opinion. To manipulate
fiat is definitely
than the gold standard. It's so much easier.
Definitely.
In my opinion,
Fiat is
keep it from getting that far down the road.
Yeah, fiat is definitely much easier, but gold is not that difficult, as was proven. Mm-hmm. The advantage with fiat is it enables, and the Fed, which I'm not necessarily a friend of. The Fed has screwed up a bunch. I have a lot of problems with the Fed, but some group, some individual has to manage monetary policy, the amount of currency, the management of the currency in the system. It can either be an independent group or it can be the government. aka the president and the secretary of treasury. So depending on which aisle of the political spectrum you are, what would you think of Biden and Yellen managing the money supply? Or what would you think of Trump and whoever managing the money supply? I think most people agree it's better not to have it in the hands of politicians. So if
I don't think that politicians should be involved at all in the money supply.
Yeah, I don't either, because they can manipulate it for their political gain, which is abhorrent, which is evil. So that leaves that independent group, and that's what the Fed is supposed to be. Now, in terms of the Fed, the people who've ended up being appointed are all academicians, theoreticians that have never worked in money lending, banking, etc. They have no real practical experience. They're operating on theories that have never been tested. They're doing it kind of whimsically, and their whimsy, their judgment has oftentimes been wrong. And they are also, in some regard, at the mercy of the Treasury. As the Treasury is, raising these huge amounts of debt, the Treasury's putting pressure on these political appointees to increase the money supply so that they can fund the debt. So there's some problems with the Fed. Completely agree. But in terms of getting rid of the Fed, I hate the alternative worse. I'd rather try to improve the Fed. My view.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And it needs major improvement.
Yeah.
And if I say something, that doesn't make sense, like I say, I try to shut things down to the cob. And sometimes I do so in such a way where there's, some details and some people would disagree or want to throw in additional information. That's fine. Please feel free. But I do try to give a non-academic explanation for what I'm just talking about. Sometimes I do better than others. What else is of interest?
Hang on. I'm not rolling my eyes. I just have this huge screen in front of me that I can read better than the one that's right here where the camera is. So if I'm looking up, I'm just trying to read the comments. I do apologize. If it seems like I'm being rude, it's not intentional.
Yeah. And like if you watch her long enough, if she does do a roll of the eyes, you'll know it. I mean, the head goes back a little bit too. The eyes are going up and the head goes back. You know it.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that before, Clay?
I see it all the time.
Oh, good Lord. Okay.
You forget who I live with.
A pain in your ass is who you live with.
Ditto.
Very good, Joe.
But I got to give her props. She is a really sweet spirit. She's done a lot of work on this channel too, so she deserves a lot of credit for it. I do, I guess, most of the gabbing, but she does a ton of work on it. Not going to lie.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
It's just the truth.
Well.
Now, another thing that I saw of some interest, which we have talked about, is immigration. And, this is not a condemnation of every immigrant. We all come from immigrant families. But 2 nights ago, 2 NYPD officers were gunned down during a traffic stop. NYPD arrested a Venezuelan immigrant. You see the guy pictured here, who came across.
Being carried.
Yeah, who came across the border in 2023 from Venezuela, about the same time that Venezuela was dumping out its prisons and encouraging them to immigrate to the U.S. Now, he has been tied to multiple robberies, and he has been a guest in New York City at one of the taxpayer-funded four-star hotels with
Aw,
room service and a
maid service.
$10,000 Visa card, not having to work for months. So again, not trying to
Bless,
condemn every immigrant.
bless his heart.
Yeah. But we're doing things wrong. We're just doing things wrong. But, you know, these people are not vetted. You've got gangs like MS-13 whose ranks have swelled from the flood across the borders. And remember, the membership requirement to join MS-13 is you have to kill an innocent person. And the system we've set up for them subsidizes the evil, the laziness, forces a dependency on the government. Now, historically, throughout our history, immigrants have gotten zero from the government. In fact, now legal immigrants have to prove their financial independence. They have to have money in the bank and they have to have a job or a very strong ability to get a job, be a doctor or engineer. And they have to pay $30,000 to get a green card. You can't legally immigrate into the country if you're going to start off on welfare. And we saw today where Biden offered mass amnesty to immigrants. And that's a key word, mass amnesty. And he closed 350,000 pending cases. So now 350,000 people no longer have to report. They're free to move about wherever they want. The thing about amnesty, and we've talked about this before, is if a illegal migrant is given amnesty, they are immediately qualified for Social Security for the maximum Social Security benefit, which right now I think is around $4,000 a month. And they're entitled to this for 7 or 8 years once they're approved for amnesty, or once they request amnesty, have achieved amnesty status. To give you a comparison, during 2020, the Trump administration, 48,000 migrants were ordered removed from the U.S. by immigration court judges. Fewer than 20,000 were granted asylum, and 4,700 had their cases closed or otherwise allowed to remain in the country. So compare the 20 and the 4,700 to 350,000, and that's just a start.
There have been actually about 16 million immigrants, illegal immigrants, coming into the country over the past 3.5 years, although that number will never, they know about 10 million that they have processed as of but there's a bunch of gotaways that they're assuming is 5 to 6 million.
Yeah, Speaker of the House Johnson has estimated there's about 17 million that have come across since the election.
I'm uploading a video right now. It's private on Studio that I think is relevant to this. So it'll take 10 minutes, but carry on.
Okay. Now, so anyway, immigration, we're just doing things wrong. We'll see what kind of consequences that has.
I know that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I know Director Wray is very concerned about the millions of people coming in that they don't know who is a terrorist and who isn't. And the U.S. is on a really, really slippery slope when it comes to, and I don't mean to freak anybody out. I think that's the video that I just uploaded. Who is okay, who's not? They don't know who is a terrorist and who isn't. They don't know their backgrounds. They haven't done enough screening. They don't know the issues. What I didn't know, by the way, about the bipartisan legislation for the border was that the Section 212F that Biden has just now implemented again, one of the ones that Trump did, the bipartisan legislation of the border would not have allowed any future president to enact that legislation, the 212F, which is return them.
Okay, I'm lost. Now, what did the 212F do?
The 212F is when you can return immigrants at the border to their countries.
Deport them back to their country.
Yes. So the bipartisan legislation would have prevented any future president from enacting that 212F executive order.
Oh, the act that was blocked 6 months ago. Okay.
Yes. And that's what Biden just now enacted.
It's interesting.
Yeah, because now he can do 2,500 per day. And that's the limit, period. Like, not, the one before was like 4,000 to 5,000 per day, but that didn't include women and children. So as many women and children could come in as they wanted to. This, the 212F, allows 2,500 per day, period. It's not a door slam. It's leaving it a little bit open, but it's a heck of a lot better than what the bipartisan bill would have been.
Interesting. All right. Kind of going to shift gears a little bit here because I'm going to throw this out without a whole lot of comment by me.
What?
Remote Amazon tribe connects to Elon Musk's Starlink internet. So we're taking the internet to remote tribes. And we find out after a few months, they become hooked on porn and social media.
Duh.
So are we bringing civilization to them, or are we ruining civilization?
Ruining it, for sure. There was somebody that went there. I can't remember. I think there's a big YouTube guy that went there, and he was asking these tribal nations about, excuse me, if a man can be a woman, a woman can be a man, and they were like, huh? What does that even mean? Like, they were just like, made no sense to them. So now they are great. Now they're following in the steps of Americans. It's just fucking perfect.
Our greatest contribution to the world, the internet, where you can get hooked on porn and social media.
And all of your morals can just be shattered in 10 minutes.
Yeah, there's just not a whole lot I can add to that.
I got nothing.
But I thought that was mildly fascinating.
Mildly amusing.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure, but
didn't know whether to laugh or cry.
I would cry.
Maybe a little of both.
That is where we are now, though. I mean, that is the.
Well, it's also a testament to human nature. Even as you think, pure, refined, unadulterated, uncorrupted by Western values, et cetera, there's a moral in there about human nature and the appeal of entertainment. we can become so obsessed with entertainment that we entertain ourselves to death, where we waste time and hours just on our own pleasure. And it goes to what end? Does it grow to where it consumes more and more of us, where we become less and less productive, less and less contributors in society? I don't know, but there's more here than just meets the eye.
Well, I mean, I think that's why, I don't want to get into book club too much, but let's just say I heard, is that okay? That, the Jews and the Christians had a covenant with God. And when we broke that, he gets to break it too. And more negative stuff gets to come in to our society, because it's like, okay, I mean, it was a two-way street. It wasn't a one-way street. It wasn't like a free pass. Humans can do whatever they want to do. No, if you start letting in the evil, well, guess what? That's what you get.
Yeah, it's there's definitely more to it than that.
Yeah.
All right. Something else that is modestly interesting. Roaring Kitty is back in the news. Now, if you're familiar with GameStop and the power behind it, Roaring Kitty is the dude.
About the stage is set for something very bad.
Ellen, is that you? There's a sound in the background.
My mic is muted. I wanted to make sure that was the correct video, but I can stop.
Well, the sound's coming through.
It
Mic's not muted.
It is. Must be my AirPods.
Okay. Back to Roaring Kitty. The Massachusetts Securities Office has announced it is probing Roaring Kitty for stock fraud, stock manipulation. The investigation is being headed by the Massachusetts Secretary of State himself, Bill Gavin, who also serves as the top securities regulator. CBNC reported that Roaring Kitty, a guy by the name actually of Keith Gill, has 5 million shares of GameStop, and he made $79 million on paper the day that GameStop ran up.
Mm-hmm.
So he is being investigated for what we would call pump and dump.
Oh, good Lord.
Knowing his power, his influence, he buys calls, then he tweets out the meme he tweeted out, the stock price soars. He can close out the calls and net the profit. So be interesting to see. This should not be a long investigation. This normally is not terribly hard to prove, because the burden of proof is simply, did he buy the calls before he tweeted it? And beyond a reasonable shadow of doubt, was his tweet impactful in moving the price? And did he expect it to be impactful? So did he know it would be impactful? Has history shown it was impactful? So that's a non-legal explanation of why these cases usually aren't terribly complex. There are a few things that the securities agencies do well, and this is one of them. So for those of you who love Roaring Kitty, thought that would be of interest to you.
I like asking this question because no one knows the answer. What was Trump charged with? Oh, Jane. Who has time to sit there on X all day? Jane, that's my job. Thanks. Down on my JOB. What was Trump charged with? Do you know?
What was the specific law,
Yes.
or in general?
What was he found guilty of?
I can't detail a specific law.
There's not one.
Yeah, the press commonly reports that fraudulent reporting of hush money.
An NDA is not illegal.
No, never has
No.
been.
Michael Cohen charged him actually after he was elected. Let's get this straight. In January of 2016, he sent him a bill, and it was the NDA. So he paid it out of his personal funds. It was an attorney bill. So they turned something that is a misdemeanor into a felony. And they did that by, well, I'm not exactly sure how they twerked that thing. But anyway, let's put it this way. If he had paid it, they said he should have paid it out of political funds. Well,
he didn't. He paid it out of his pocket.
They said that he should have paid it out of political funds.
No, that would be illegal.
No, that's what they charged him with because it was for a political purpose. That was the whole thing.
Yeah, it was saying he's making a political contribution in kind. But he paid it out of his pocket, not out of political funds.
Right, because it was an NDA. He paid it out of his pocket. If it had been paid through the political funds, they would have charged him with that too.
Well, the thing is,
if the opposite is true, if the opposite happens, and they're going to charge you anyway, there's nothing you can do to not get charged.
Well, the thing is, they charged him with fraud. Well, who did he defraud? He defrauded himself. Secondly, in the prosecution's argument, they pointed out that because of the way that was accounted for, that he actually overpaid his taxes. So it's the first case in history where somebody overpaid the IRS and was accused of fraud.
But yeah, but that's the whole thing that made it a felony was that he didn't use his political funds or donations to pay
You can't do donation. You cannot use donations. No, you simply cannot use donations.
But he paid it out of his pocket, and that's why they're mad.
Okay, we'll disagree here.
I've watched the whole thing. What are you talking about?
I know. We'll disagree here. We'll settle this. We'll settle this with a bet later.
If he had paid it out of his political donations, he still would have been tried. No?
I'm not arguing.
Okay, whatever.
Michael Cohen was butthurt because Donald Trump didn't take him to the White House.
He was.
Cohen and Stormy Daniels both have testified on both sides of the coin. So do you believe them when they spoke that, Trump didn't know, didn't do anything? Or do you believe them when they said, yes, Trump knew, he did something?
He didn't.
Normally, you don't take the word of a convicted, documented, proven perjurer as substantial testimony, particularly when there's no corroborating evidence. It's just, the whole thing is just highly unusual. And it'll have severe repercussions. Is lawfare now going to become standard practice? I just saw where the State Department pulled the passport of a guy by the name of Scott Ritter. He's a former Marine intelligence officer that was traveling to an economics conference in St. Petersburg, Russia, to speak at the conference. Well, State Department pulled his passport for what? No reason given. No trial, no conviction, nothing illegal. They just pulled his passport as he was trying to get on the plane. So that's just wrong. You know, you've got the court system is just going berserk with some of these cases. So if we, and entering an era where the courts can be used for political repression of opponents, that's likely going to go both ways. Who was it? Dietrich Bonhoeffer. No, it wasn't Bonhoeffer. What was the quote? Let me get Niemöller. He let me find the full quote. He said, "First they came for the communist, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialist, and I did not speak out." And he was talking about the Nazis. This was in 38 or 39. And then they came for the socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. So that is kind of a, historic, relatively well-known quote that I think is almost a scary prophecy for what we're starting to see if it's not reversed soon. So they're just things in this country that I have not seen before. I'm 65. So it's not a hugely long historical sample, but I am fairly familiar with its history. I study history. I love history. And they're just things that concern me about current trends, politically as well as economically. Who you guys voting for? Well, I'm voting for the good guy. Jane, what do you think's going to happen with Hunter Biden not paying his taxes?
I know they're doing the only thing that he's got on his docket right now is the gun charges, and that is coming up this next week. I think, if not this week, next week. So,
yeah, I saw a thing today where it said Hunter said Joe Biden's daughter has been charged twice, nothing. Hunter Biden has been charged twice. His son has been charged twice, nothing. His brother has been charged, nothing. It just listed this litany of family members that had been charged or investigated for crimes, and nothing had happened ever. Is past prologue.
Yeah. Let me just say this. If what Trump did is a felony, then Bill Clinton should be prosecuted. Hillary Clinton should be prosecuted. Obama should be prosecuted. I mean, Hillary used campaign funds to do things that she shouldn't have done. I mean, Bill Clinton, forgive my language, was having sex in the Oval Office with one of his intern pages, whatever they do. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and then he paid Paula, help me out,
Jones.
$800,000 to be
Yeah.
quiet.
Hush money.
I mean, seriously, people, if this is not a two-tiered government, I don't know what is.
Thank you.
Aw.
Thank you, Sky. Or I don't know, considering some of the people we've had holding office, I don't know if that's much of a recommendation or not, but I've always thought I was far too big of an asshole to ever win any kind of vote.
That's why I should be president and you should be VP.
Jane, I think Biden will pardon himself and all of his family so nothing ever happens to them. That's very possible. And if so, nothing can be done about it.
And I'm sorry, but if a vice president takes home classified documents versus
that he's not entitled to take home,
and he can't declassify them, but he's just a sweet old man with a poor memory. No, seriously, you might want to play that video that I put up on a studio that's private, so you can play, just so you can see it. Yeah, I know, right? But he's totally fine to run the country. It probably just has a date on it. It might have immigration on it. I'm not sure.
Oh, geez.
Content.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Computer's fighting me a little bit.
Now, why would I do recommend going and watching Vivek Ramaswamy's take on the trial. That's where I got my information, Clay.
Yeah, this video is like 5 minutes long. Is there a particular section?
Just start playing it. And you can stop and do what you need to do. I can't remember. I've done several today.
Well, let me see. I'm going to have to restart that because of the well-known
volume.
Yeah. All right.
Boston field office, in which he explains that conspiracies about the FBI causing the Capitol insurrection are false and concerning.
No objection.
And finally, I ask unanimous consent to enter an excerpt from FBI Director Ray's testimony before the committee, for this committee last July, where he states, quote,
Okay, pass that.
this notion that
Pass that.
How far?
To where the next guy is on. These are just points of order. No, wrong one. Shit. Sorry. Matt Gaetz is pretty good, though.
Garland?
No. I thought I just had it.
It's all Gates and Garland.
It's not what I just had, though. Damn it. Sorry.
That's what it is. Sorry.
That's all right.
And doctor, why was it so important that the virus not have
All right.
in the lab?
I can't find it anymore. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. There's a couple other things we can hit. I'm going to mute your mic so the background noise.
It's already muted.
No, it's not. We can hear it.
It is here.
You are now. Like I say, WAP, we are professionals. Jane, he's too old and senile to prosecute. Imagine that. But he's not too old to serve in the most powerful position in the world and have his finger on the nukes. You got to wonder what the hell is going on sometimes. It just doesn't make sense. This is where I kind of want to cry out, somebody make it make sense. Because I look at these things and just have to shake my head. I'm not particularly pleased with, either party. And, we talk about, the current administration because, yeah, they're the ones in power. They're the ones, making the decisions. And when they make bad decisions that are going to end up hurting people, particularly the poor and the middle class, obviously there's some people doing well under this administration. We're going to talk about that. We're going to address that. We're going to look at ramifications and issues. So, do you really think they let him have the nuclear codes? I would hope not. But the way things have gone so far, I honestly wouldn't make the argument either way. If he doesn't, with some of the people surrounding him, that gets even scarier maybe. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Check out the Scene Ryan podcast with Tucker Carlson. Tucker discusses a lot of these topics, and it's very interesting. I'll try to look it up. I don't, obviously, like I say, I'm not a huge YouTuber podcast kind of person. There's only so many hours in the day. But, if y'all have something to recommend or specifically commend, I'll take a look at it. And Jane, you've had obviously some very good tips before. So they are greatly appreciated. There is just so much out there, so much that I can't track or keep up, that if you've got something that you think would be, significant, important, of interest, let me know. I appreciate it. It's just a fascinating time to be alive. Now, Ellen is searching for the video. Kind of give a review of the news. Was going through different, I'll search probably 50 different websites a day during a normal day, looking for news, tips, trends, information, whatever, because information is kind of my job. And, I just kind of took a little survey today of the top news stories. Obviously, as already demonstrated, 65 banks are classified by the FDIC as troubled. That with roughly $500 billion of non-recognized gains. And remember, we talked about that. Those non-recognized gains are losses that they have on their investments if they sold them now. For example, if you buy a stock or a bond at $100 and the current value is $50, you have a $50 unrecognized loss. Whereas if you went ahead and sold it, you would receive the value, $50 in value, and you would actually take or realize that $50 loss. So, whoops. Who's the most cleanest shirt in the laundry? That's it. It's not a bad way of summing it up. And honestly, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. I'm not convinced particularly with the quality of journalism in this country nowadays, to me, most of the media organizations are generally trying to persuade people to their perspective. They're not really anymore just reporting the news. So I just have a healthy, I'm in Missouri on a lot of the news. I believe there's a little truth in it, but there's a whole lot more to dig out. LKO, welcome. Don't know if I've seen you before, but not sure what you're asking or saying here. So if you could kind of restate that, I'd be grateful. Love to hear from you. Appreciate your comments. But the top story on the news events, I see Ellen's lips moving. Are you trying to talk? Do you want me to unmute you? I don't lip read, but I'm pretty sure of what she said right then. You're live.
Wow, that's very sweet of you. I do appreciate that.
Well, there was background noise coming from the videos you were watching.
Okay, we got one view. We got one up and two's coming. So if you want to play those, they're both there. If you want to play them. Finally.
All right. Finally. Let's see what we got.
They're just listed as 1 and 2. I think they're in the right order. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're not showing up yet.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
They do.
One doesn't load. All right. It just popped up. Let me do this. Actually. All right, let me do this.
I don't know what you're doing.
I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm hitting 50 different buttons trying to get everything cleared off and reshare the screen, which I've got to do again because it's a new video with sound. For those of you that are not familiar, we use a service called StreamYard. And when you throw up a video with sound, you have to restart the whole screen sharing process, which is about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 clicks and takes a hot minute. Because otherwise the sound doesn't come through YouTube or hasn't in the past. So here's video number 1 from Miss Ellen.
Because this administration's policies, you now have millions and millions who have been allowed into this country or who have evaded the Border Patrol while they've been overwhelmed admitting these millions in. And I worry about the stage is set for something very bad happening in the very near future because of your administration's policies. As reported, the president intends to use Section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act to turn back illegal entries once they reach 2,500 a day. That's nearly 1 million a year. So that's not closing the barn door. That's keeping it propped open indefinitely. But it is a lower number than your administration's tolerated so far. Yet, the last 3 years, 3.5 years, the president's maintained that he has no such authority. So what's changed other than we're 5 months before the election?
I'm going to have to refer you to the Department of Homeland Security, which is responsible for the border issues. I would say that the best way to protect the border was to pass the bipartisan legislation that was proposed.
You're responsible. Well, the bipartisan legislation would have forbidden future presidents from using that very authority until illegal entries reach 4,000 a day. So because of this administration.
You can go back if you want to do the other one. I'm not sure if that was kind of the main points, but. Are you there?
Yeah. Let me see if I can do this.
Last year, your FBI director told this committee that he believes this constitutes a massive security threat. Again, his words. You agree with that assessment?
I'm never going to be disagreeing with the FBI director, but my recollection, he said there is a national security threat of people from known terrorist organizations crossing the border, and the FBI will do everything it can to follow those people if they manage to make it across the border and to ensure that the country is protected.
We could go into that in great detail, but my greatest fear is that we could face a coordinated terrorist attack from elements among the millions who've entered this country illegally over the last 3 years. Is this fear justified?
I am worried about the possibility of a terrorist attack in the country after October 7th. The threat level for us has gone up enormously. Every morning, we worry about this question. We try to track anyone who might be trying to hurt the country. Of course, this is a
Okay.
He is a sad, pathetic man.
And you know, the interesting thing is with some of the comments and policies he's enacted, he imagine him on the Supreme Court would have been vastly different.
Well, they're trying to get rid of Alito and Thomas now to, take any of Trump stuff, any of the Trump issues. They think
Yeah,
that Alito
I
and
haven't-
Thomas are biased.
I haven't heard as much. That initially there was a cry to try to pack the court, to expand the court, but that kind of died out. And now, you know, they focus more on trying to get Alito to recuse himself because he was flying a flag upside down.
And Thomas.
So it's
I would love to see Cash too. I like Cash Patel.
yeah, who's trying to think who's the next Supreme Court justice? Who's the oldest Supreme Court justice? I don't
Thomas?
remember. No. Maybe.
No?
I don't know. I was trying to think of who's most likely to retire next, thinking that the next president will have another appointment, but I'm not sure who's the oldest.
I'm not sure, but I would love to see Cash Patel's Attorney General. If you haven't watched anything on Cash Patel, look him up. He's a great dude.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of common sense is what we're missing these days. I mean, if you just have common sense, it's not all that difficult. But I feel like it's gone. You know, I've heard people have told me in the past day or two that, you know, they know liberals who think that Trump is going to be the next Hitler. He's going to, you know, fascism. And really, he didn't do it the first time. He's not going to do it this time. But I do fear that if we are heading down the path we are with Biden, that we will definitely be a socialist government before his 4 years is up. It's just my opinion, but there it is.
I mean, you know, there's some things to buttress that point. It's hard to argue that the DOJ, the CIA, the FBI haven't been weaponized against political opponents. And it goes all the way back to,
Sotomayor.
Sotomayor has, she's under some pressure to resign so that, you know, Biden can appoint the next one. If she doesn't resign and Trump wins, and then, you know, she does resign, that's going to be just one hell of a storm with whoever Trump nominates as a replacement.
I agree.
So, you know, we live in fascinating times. We really do. You know, I focus generally on the economic.
I'm more
And, you know, Ellen's on, you know, pays attention to other stuff.
other stuff.
Yeah, politics and,
I do
you know,
too, James.
some of the other softer skills.
Politics is
but,
a soft skill. Okay.
No, I said, and some other soft skills.
Okay. Yeah, I do
But,
too. I'll come
you know,
up
most,
there and watch it together.
yeah, most of my world revolves around finance, economics, and it's kind of what the show is geared toward. But though we'll delve into other things because they are the issues of life. Whether you agree with somebody's politics or not, I think it's important to discuss them, to consider other views, to consider perspectives, and to amend our views and perspectives to the facts that can be ascertained,
Mhm.
to the evidence that can be shown and demonstrated. Now, I think basic principles, that's the thing about America, is we have always had some diversity, different religions, different cultures, whatever.
Mhm.
But it's always been a pluralistic society. But pluralism requires a unity within the diversity. You have to share certain common principles. And those principles are, basically what was detailed in the Declaration of Independence, the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Wait,
Those are the
doesn't
shared,
doesn't that contradict the "you will own nothing and be happy"?
pretty much. But those are the sum of the American, those are the guarantors of the American dream. And we're not the first nation to value life. We're not the first nation to value liberty. What sets us apart is we are the first nation to declare to the rest of the world, to everybody else, that every individual has the right, the God-given, inalienable right to pursue their own happiness. The only limit on that is where they interfere with somebody else, interfere with somebody else's rights. The old adage is your rights end where my nose begins. Attorneys generally tend to hate that, but I'm not an attorney, and this is just kind of the Cliff Notes version. But that's a common, traditional, everyday understanding of rights. You have the right to live your life, to pursue your own happiness, pursue your own dreams, free of government interference or limits placed on you by any other individual, as long as they don't harm anybody else.
And you
And
can't
that's,
incite violence. You can't,
yeah, you can't argue for violence, and you can't intentionally defame somebody else's
Nope.
character or reputation.
or religious beliefs.
But again,
that is the whole deal.
That's injuring them.
Hmm.
So you have rights, but you have no right to injure somebody else.
And all this crap on campuses, this is the total bullshit. They are absolutely using their constitutional rights to do what they weren't intended for.
Yeah, the right to protest doesn't give you the right to obstruct, limit, or harm somebody else. So, for example, blocking the road, I believe people have the right to peacefully protest and, redress their grievances. I don't believe they have the right to block a road. And
No,
so
those
if
women-
you try to get in front of a car, I don't have a problem if that car, does what it's supposed to do on the road and just keeps driving. Go slowly at first, give you a chance. But how many of y'all remember or are familiar with Reginald Denny?
Hmm.
Does that name ring a bell to anybody? Reginald Denny.
Refresh my memory.
The LA riots
Hmm.
back in, what year was that?
That was in the early 90s, wasn't it?
92.
Mhm.
1992. And Denny was a truck driver trying to make a delivery, and he didn't know the riots were occurring, and he was turning the corner. Well, his truck was blocked by protesters who surrounded his truck, pulled him out, and beat him to death.
I do. Okay, I remember that. Yep.
And so to that end, you know, if you were driving and saw protesters, particularly who were animated, agitated, what it would not get out of the way of your car, I think it's reasonable that you have fear for your life, for your health, for your welfare, much less your property, your car. So I don't think you can be compelled. My own personal belief would be that you could not be compelled to stop if it was not a, you know, if there weren't, like, you have a parade in the streets, you get a permit, police redirect traffic, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're caught unawares, trapped, you know, do you sit there and let them smash your windows, drag you out of the car, and do whatever they want? That probably, you know, that should not be required of anybody. So,
well, why? I mean, it shouldn't even be an option. I mean, I don't know.
and, you know, storming a building,
Something that anyone has to deal with.
yeah, storming a building, holding residents hostage, not allowing them to, you know, leave or enter
Or
to
go
do
to
their
class.
work, go to class, blocking the sidewalks where people can't, you know, access certain places, parks. You know, I don't think you have the right to limit anybody else in your protest, but you do have the right to peacefully protest.
Yes, you do.
So there are ways to do it where you don't have to cause injury, harm, or loss to somebody else.
What do you think has caused all this?
I think it's a cycle.
Pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas.
You know, I see, you know, some people interviewing these kids, and one of them was a gay tranny. A guy had on a pink wig and a dress or whatever, and he was interviewing some other, I guess I'll say, gay supporters at a, you know, some sort of protest or whatever. And he asked them, you know, there was this one girl saying, "Oh, I've been to Israel and I've been to Palestine." And so he asked, "Well, who do you support?" She said, "Palestine." And he said, "You know, that's troubling, because if I was in Palestine, the government there, the Palestinians, would put me to death, throw me off of a roof."
Heck yeah.
And the girl looked stunned, absolutely stunned. She said, "Are you talking about Israel?" He goes, "No, Palestine."
Ooh.
And she was like, and he was saying, you know, there is no Muslim country in which he could be open about his
Sexual orientation.
sexual orientation.
If you're gay, they'll throw you off the
And-
building. That's it.
And she was sitting there going, "Well, isn't Israel Muslim?"
No.
And he was going, "No, they're Jewish." And, you know, she just sat there stunned and dumbfounded. And he asked her, "What do you think about that?" And she said, "Well, you know, that's just really, that's something to think about."
You think?
And so, you know, to address your question specifically, I think our educational system, which I'm a huge critic of, has done
Yeah,
such
you're
a
in it.
horrible, I'm in it, so I can criticize it, has done such a horrible job of teaching these kids not only certain basic human values and courtesy, but even practical realities and history and proper grammar and how to add and subtract. We really haven't, as an educational system, we have failed so many of them, particularly in the inner city. The inner city schools, particularly in the bigger cities, are absolutely horrendous. Baltimore, Chicago, LA, it's not uncommon for them to have 0 students at grade level at grade level performance in their inner city schools. That's inexcusable. That's contemptible. These kids, if these kids don't get an education, they have no hope of a better future. And so we're robbing them of hope. We're robbing them of opportunity. We're robbing them of a chance to improve their life. I have a problem with that, a big problem with that.
Yep.
So, you ask, why are they like they are? Well, part of it, I blame on the educational system.
So they just really
Part of
don't
it-
know what they're protesting against.
Yeah, just complete ignorance. They just take whatever's in vogue and go with it. Part of it is a complete parental failure. Parents have failed to train, teach. Parents have a responsibility to teach and instruct their kids and to make sure they're getting teaching and instruction. And they're not. They use schools as a babysitting service, and a lot of them, way too many of them, just don't care, or there's a few that are just don't have the time. They're working 2, maybe 3 jobs because they have to, and they don't have a whole lot of fallback in terms of time with their kids and whatever. So, in some cases it can't be helped, but in a lot of cases it's just parental failure, in my opinion. And the advantage of a poorly educated population, as we've talked about before, is they are easier to control. It's harder, much harder, or if not impossible, to control a well-educated populace.
If they keep them ignorant, they can control them, says Jane.
Yep. So, well, we're about up to the 9 o'clock hour. Anybody have any other questions, comments? I've got to stick pretty close to the 9 o'clock tonight because I've got to go help a friend move some stuff.
Yes, you do.
I have a truck, and so I'm doing the neighbor thing.
Everybody wants
But-
a truck. What
Everybody
did I
ought to
tell
have a
you?
truck.
Hang on. In the cooking show, I told you, people of the neighborhood only call us if they need something fixed or they want to borrow the truck. I
So
was not kidding.
I won't say they only call us for that, but
Most-
we will help people if they need it, and
Yes,
we're
we
glad to do it. Think
Yes,
that's
it's
kind of
right.
what
Yes,
neighbors
of course.
do.
More than a ton of gold. Yes. And good on you, Clay. Yes. There's a story behind that, Melissa. I'll tell you later.
I've got the ability to help a neighbor, and hope that and believe that they would return the same favor. So
They would.
it's not a problem, but my time is limited. So as we are hitting the 9 o'clock hour, we'll go ahead and see if there are any last minute questions, comments. We don't forget we've got the book club tomorrow night. Hope
If
you'll
you
all be
haven't
able
read
to
it-
join us there. It will be on
read it.
Zoom. We'll post a link on the community page. Again, if you don't want your image or name, you can use another nickname. You don't have to show your face.
If you have not read it, please still show up. Please. Please, please. And Sky, my hair's still a wet mess.
She was like earlier, should
Flipping it.
I wear a hat or whatever? And I was like, no, it looks good. So
Aw, thanks. I guess it's the hairstylist thing for 14 years, I was actually just trying to keep it out of my face. I was just like, it just keeps getting everywhere.
she just plays with it all the time.
My hair's a hot mess.
So
But thank you.
y'all, we love you. We thank you for your
We do.
time, for your night. Greatly appreciate it. So our time is up. We thank you for yours. Good night. Blessings to you.
Love you guys.